a production of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. Visit us at mesachamber.org.
First of all, welcome everyone. So thanks for being here this morning. First up, David, I appreciate you being here from GENUBank. And one of the things we have talked about a few times or more than a few times, is cryptocurrency. And GENUBank, I believe, was Kirkwood Bank prior to its sale. And the gentleman that purchased the bank was into cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and they're working on a way to combine crypto into banking and how that works. So I thought instead of me just stumbling through it, I would have David on there and just kind of give us a little update on kind of what they're doing at GENUBank and where you're at in the process. So David, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And, I appreciate everybody's time. And I'll just give you a high level overview of what we're trying to accomplish. Cryptocurrency obviously is just a huge market. I mean, it's grown tremendously over the past, several years. It was a $1.2 million market in 2013, and it's now grown over $2 trillion as of 2021. So what GENUBank is attempting to do is it's attempting to offer a banking service to consumers, but then also offer, at least initially, a crypto on and off ramp, which will allow consumers to safely hold cryptocurrency within a wallet that is also connected to their traditional banking account and banking services. So what we're attempting to do is we're attempting to launch an online digital platform that includes all of the best, sort of traditional banking services, your instant payments, ACHs, and everything you would typically see. And then also, again, offer those safe holdings with cryptocurrency. So it's been quite a journey thus far, and we still continue to work on it. But we're hopeful to launch probably early next year.
So how's just, I mean, from a regulatory issue, are there lots of extra hoops to jump through here with what you're attempting to do, and what are some of the hurdles?
Very much so, yeah. There's a lot of regulatory concerns out there because, quite frankly, crypto, I don't want to say it's entirely similar to marijuana, but there's just a lot of uncertainty when it comes to regulation. There's not a whole lot of clear regulation from the banking side of things, the accounting side of things, compliance. There's traveler rule issues to worry about, and ensuring that if somebody does move cryptocurrency from a wallet outside of the bank into the bank's wallet, for example, we have to know exactly where that comes from. Anti-money laundering. So there's a lot of risks that we have to take into consideration, and it's very difficult at times to kind of navigate through those murky regulatory waters, because there's been a lot of statements that have come out stating, especially on the stablecoin side. For everybody who doesn't know, a stablecoin is usually a coin that's created that is considered stable, that's backed by some sort of reserve, whether that be cash or another asset. There's been a lot of talk about what banks can and can't do as far as stablecoin, but we don't actually have clear guidance or regulation on what we could do for cryptocurrency as a whole. So there's a lot of attorneys involved, a lot of consultants involved, but we are trying to guide those or get through those murky waters.
So are there any other banks that are as far along, or I would assume you're kind of leading the charge on this and kind of writing the way, and the regulators are probably writing it along the way as well.
Yeah, and we have some open lines of dialogue and communication with them. They were complimentary of what we've done thus far, and they're very curious to see where we go. We're very much in the early research and development phase. Because again, we're trying to figure out exactly what we want to roll out and what phases we plan on doing so. Because again, it's really at launch, it's going to be more of just a traditional digital bank that happens to offer a wallet for consumers. So it's not going to be a huge seismic shift at first. But there is one other bank that we are aware of that recently gained an OCC charter, Fast Bank. They're on the East Coast, and they're trying to do something very similar to us, where there appears to be targeting mainly consumers, and they're also offering crypto services. They are partnering, from our understanding, with Coinbase to actually hold those funds. And one of the things that we're, evaluating is that, obviously, in order to store a lot of these assets, not necessarily on our bank's balance sheet, but off balance sheet, is working with, different firms or different wallet providers in order to accomplish that. And working with some fintechs. Fintechs are kind of leading the charge in the space. There's a lot of fintechs out there that offer cryptocurrency services, on-off ramps, things of that nature. But unfortunately, they're not quite as regulated as banks, and the cryptocurrency as a whole. At any time there could be a major issue, breach, hack. So that's one of our goals. We're trying to make it as safe as possible for consumers to enter the space, while, again, still making their investments that they would have made otherwise.
Great. Great. I know it's interesting watching your progress, David, at GENUBank and what's going on, because it's really, they're obviously right at the front end and something we've talked about for a long time, and really curious to see how this goes. Does anyone else have any questions for David while we have him on the line this morning? I appreciate you taking time to be here for a few minutes this morning and kind of giving us an idea what's going on. We'll definitely stay in touch, David, and I'm sure we'll be following you in the Wall Street Journal as well and what's going on, because it will get plenty of coverage. So, all right.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much, David.
I appreciate it. Thank
Good
you.
luck. Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.
Inder, next. So are you at an okay spot driving, so I won't cause you to
No,
crash?
you're good. No, I'm actually at where I need to be. I'm just in the parking lot. So that's why you see me looking around. I'm just trying to keep track of attendees. But good to be with everybody this morning. I always appreciate, being able to be on this call. And I thank Sally for reaching out earlier this week. Not a huge update on our end. That's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of moving parts in Washington right now. I know people hate hearing the word fluid, but that is what this is, right? There are a couple major things going on. Obviously, the bipartisan infrastructure package. Hopefully, it's coming up for a vote here Tuesday, or Monday or Tuesday here. Leadership has said that that's what's going to happen in the House, right? And this framework has been agreed to in principle across chambers and at the White House. So we're very hopeful that, again, this is the package Senator Sinema helped lead and negotiate. So we're very hopeful that this will continue. We'll have a good win this week. But that being said, it's obviously there's a lot of gamesmanship being played right now, as does happen in Washington, to tie this package in with the larger reconciliation bill. We're happy that essentially they're being decoupled here, and that there is going to be a vote here, because there are so many good things in it for Arizona, and for Arizona's growth, and for its economy, its businesses, and its families. So really, really happy about that. We'll have to, obviously, again, there's a lot of disagreement, again, negotiation happening as to what should be in that larger reconciliation bill. That's not just us. There are a lot of moderates in the House who are saying the exact same thing. And I think the most recent news to come out is that the White House it has talked to leadership and has agreed on a menu of things that people broadly agree on in the caucus to include as part of a reconciliation package. Now, whatever that's going to be is still being built. So that's something that the senator is going to evaluate again, very carefully. And we don't have any particular positions on individual components right now, because again, with the size and scope of this package, it would just be irresponsible to talk about individual provisions as things are continuously negotiated. The other two components here are that there needs to be a CR to continue funding the government as we need to avoid a shutdown. And the other side of this is we need to raise the debt limit. Obviously, there's a lot of gamesmanship being played on these two parts as well. It's not good for the United States default. It's not good for our institutions. There are ripple effects. And the senator, encourages her colleagues, again, to work together and figure out how we can avoid something that's just would be awful for this country. So we're going to continue to work on everything we can here and represent Arizona's interests and ensure that whatever dollars do get spent, again, and the senator's been very vocal about her dislike of the current level funding being proposed in the reconciliation package because she wants to ensure that every single dollar we spend makes the significant impact that it's supposed to be, and that it's paid for responsibly. So that's what we're doing over in the Sinema team. I do have to hop off here, but before I do, I want to make sure I gather any questions or comments to pass off to our team, and I'm happy to drop my contact information below as well. But thank you so much.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Inder. I appreciate that very much. Inder, with the House inclusion of safe banking within the NDAA, which passed last night, which, I still, we're still very much up in the air for an NDAA passage somewhere in the October timeframe. I'm sorry, October-November timeframe. I'm wondering if there's a way for us to request through your office to get someone from Senate Banking to give us a deep dive into the implementation of what safe banking is going to do to the rest of to our respected industry. This is a piece of legislation that focuses on how to safely bank marijuana and cannabis throughout the state. And I think it's going to open up some tremendous opportunities for everybody on the call. But I don't want to, I'm certainly not a subject matter expert on this. So I'm wondering if there's a way for us to potentially get a safe banking deep dive from Senate Banking from one of your colleagues, perhaps via Zoom at one of our upcoming meetings.
Gotcha. That's a great question, Rick, and I appreciate you asking. I'm not an expert in that myself either, but a couple ideas there are: one, let's connect on what questions you guys have. If you can pop them over to us, we can look at this, I think, one of two ways. I know, obviously, as they're dealing with quite a bit, obviously, as we negotiate these packages. If we have a list of questions, we can figure out whether we need to, whether we can get those answers directly, or for ideally, and it sounds like what you're requesting, some sort of briefing. But yeah, if you can send over a list of questions or kind of an idea of what we're looking for, I'm happy to make sure that we're trying to get you guys answers.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
No.
Yeah, I just saw that yesterday, Rick, as well, that was included. So I know there's into the National Defense Authorization Act. I know there's 35 states that have cannabis legalized in some way, and the SAFE Act was held up and not gone through. So it's going to be, this is something that I think our committee talked about a few times, and it would be great to see to get some updates on this, so I can get some questions to Inder, and if you all have any, if you want to funnel them to me or to Sally, and we'll have an update on that at our next meeting. So great. Any other questions for Inder before he has to hop off? And
Inder, before you go, Mike here is going to give him an update on 1031 like-kind exchange in a second. But your office has been incredibly helpful. The senator has been a huge champion of this, and so you're going to miss Mike and I saying some wonderful things about your boss in the next few minutes. So
I hear a lot of people say nice things about my boss, and I hear a lot of people say bad things about my boss. It's just another day in the life, Rick. But I appreciate the kind sentiments. I sure appreciate the positive more than the negative.
We appreciate the work, Inder. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. All right.
All right, you do. Thanks, Inder. All right, Rick and Mike, I'm looking forward to this update. So thanks for being here this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, James, for having us. I want to introduce Mike from Inland Securities. Mike, is it Ezel or Ezel?
Ezel.
Ezel. Mike is the CEO of Inland Securities, and has been doing a fantastic job of helping us. I apologize. Helping us establish a coalition around the state to talk about the impact that this is going to have potentially on the state. So Mike, appreciate you being here this morning.
Sure, and I'll just give a quick intro and then kind of talk about kind of what it means to us. And I am a former Arizonan. I'm currently in Atlanta, Georgia, where I've lived much of my life in the Southeast, but I lived in Arizona, the northern Phoenix, for about 5.5 years in the early part of this last decade, and I will tell you, I miss it desperately. I spent some time in Chicago previous to that, previous to coming back to Atlanta, and it's my first polar vortex made me really appreciate what everybody has there and the beautiful stuff. So I really appreciate your time today. I obviously work with Inland. Inland is a 5+ decade commercial real estate company. It was started by 4 Chicago public school teachers back in 1967. So this is a true American success story. It has grown to be, to managing multiple billions of real estate across the country for individual retail investors. We have a number of properties across Arizona. We have a number of our the financial advisors that we work with are across Arizona as well. And our head of sales, Colin Cosgrove, along with Rick, who has been instrumental in working on this coalition, also lives there in downtown Phoenix. So, pardon me. Apologies for that. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm unfortunately working off my iPad this morning because my computer is challenged. Anyway, we'll get right back to it. So, with all the commercial real estate that Inland invests in with retail investors, a large portion of that is focused on 1031 exchanges. So if you have an individual that owned a rental property or a small business that owns a small retail shop or warehouse distribution center, they can sell that property, exchange it for another piece of real estate, and there's a tax deferral, there's no immediate tax bill. And so this is a very important piece of what drives the economy here in this country, especially as it relates to real estate. And with the recent tax policy that's been proposed, 1031 is under attack at this point in time. We think, in our view, that, and there's been studies that have been put together, there's been academics that have spent time kind of looking at the actual economic impact of this, is that it does ultimately at the macro level impact flows of capital. It impacts how much investment takes place, whether it be in small business, whether it be in areas where there needs to be more capital flowing to in your various locales, or even just the effort to conserve land. So you think about a farmer and a rancher buying land, selling land, and perhaps passing it through to their heirs or setting it up for a conservation benefit. These are all things that are important, and 1031 directly impacts. And that's at the macro level. At the micro level, it truly supports job creation around the country. It allows small businesses to retain capital versus actually paying it out in taxes and reinvest in their business. As I said, this often serves underserved areas around the country, land conservation. And one of the areas that we've heard a lot from is just really farmers, ranchers, and how this impacts their ability to plan both in their business on a day-to-day basis, but also in terms of how it interacts with their children and their ability to think about generationally how it'll impact their farms. And so we've been out there talking to people about this, making sure that they understand. And Rick and Colin Cosgrove, who I mentioned, who lives there in Phoenix, have been instrumental in getting, along with Inder and others, getting a coalition together that's really rather diverse, which is really impressive to see different groups coming together to speak proactively about this part of the tax code that's been around for, I think about 100 years plus, and something that's very, very monumental to real estate owners. And it's not just a large kind of tax loophole. It's actually designed to allow small businesses and other, kind of the breadth and depth of this country to continue to move forward economically as efficiently as possible. So I guess coming here I can answer any questions you might have about further impact, or even if you have any questions about what it is, but to certainly ask you to think about reaching out to your local representative there in Arizona. I know the Arizona Coalition is very interested in the details surrounding this and proactively trying to address it with their constituents. But also there's been a great letter that's been put together where we've had this diverse group begin to sign it. And Rick, maybe you'd like to speak a little bit to that. You've been very instrumental in helping us do that.
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Mike. The coalition has been built. They've done a fantastic job on this of bringing together different major economic drivers of the state. So, for example, the Arizona Western growers out of the Yuma region represents about $3.3 to $4 billion in agriculture annually. They were one of our key signers. the Arizona Realtors Association came on board and signed on to this as well. So we've got the realtors. We excuse me. We have the cattle growers. We have the the Pima, the cotton growers, the Arizona Farm Bureau. So we have a pretty wide coalition of impacted parties throughout the country, the state. If anybody's familiar with the 5 C's, we've hit almost every C, or damn near close to it. And the rationale in doing this is that 1031 like kind exchanges have been up for consideration as a pay for by the Democrats for the last couple of years, particularly now going into the Biden administration. So the intention of the coalition essentially is to show the impact on the entire state. We can get into cap conversations and we can get into negotiations, et cetera. But the bottom line is this program has been around for 100 years, has done some significantly good work for real estate development and for company growth. Could be small, medium, large company growth. So the team at Inland has been fantastic in that. And next week, we will be hosting an event in DC with the Arizona State Society on Tuesday. It's a reception, but the concept of it essentially will be to show that decisions like this coming out of DC can have a massive impact on the state, and not necessarily where you think it would be an impact on the state. So one of the things about the coalition that I've liked very much is this impacts smaller farms in Greer, Arizona, up to realtors across the state. So if there's any interest from the Mesa Financial Network in becoming a signer onto that letter, we would really appreciate it. You certainly don't have to, but if that's of interest of the network, we would certainly appreciate you and your voice weighing in on this, not just for it being used within the reconciliation or transportation bill, but beyond that into the next pay for item that comes along that we need to protect against.
I'm sure you would get most of the banks all the banks to sign on there, Rick. I know just for us, our small bank, we do a number of 1031 exchange loans. We just had one in loan committee last week, and it's a small engineering firm, and they had a property, and they're moving into a larger property and doing a 1031. And I had talked to them about a month ago about potential issues here that they had not heard of yet. And I think there's definitely a misconception that the 1031 is only for rich people. Not true. It would be a huge hit to honestly all the banks, and the effect on all these folks to roll over into additional properties and keep things moving forward would be a huge hit. So I think the more that gets known about this, I really don't see this as a partisan issue. It shouldn't be. I'm just thinking about the last 5 or 6 1031 deals we did, and I think most of them would have been Democrats. So I think this is something that definitely needs to be addressed.
James,
Sign on to that letter, Rick.
This is why our groups are formed, right? So we can sign on to things like this if needed. So I mean, if you are comfortable and the group's comfortable, I think that's more than appropriate.
Great.
And if you think it would help,
well, absolutely. We appreciate your support very much.
Okay.
I think, Mike, if you wouldn't mind sharing the letter with Sally, or I'm happy to do it, or however you want to go about it.
Yeah, we'd be happy to get a copy over to you for your review. And as you said, it is something that impacts. It's especially with our former president being a real estate individual, investor himself, right? That is something that kind of gets thrown around, and I think there's misconceptions about it. There is a very strong reason why small business needs this, and it's a driver of employment across the country. And this is, you mentioned the example, right? We're not working with super wealthy people across the country. This is almost the 401k of real estate. it is something that is it's highly useful and highly meaningful. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll take that a step further. And I agree with you, James, completely that it should not be a partisan issue, but it's one of the tax provisions that seems to be of very much interest. And I'm not going to say that it was, targeted specifically to go after former President Trump, but a lot of the early language in the Wall Street Journal and a few different articles called this a Trump loophole. And that right there, massive red flags on the Hill. So a lot of the work that we've done through the coalition is education on the state, but also education to the congressional delegation to say, okay, hold up. This impacts a lot of people, and you're going to be throwing the baby out with the bathwater here if you do this. And that nuance piece was a bit of a challenge, particularly during COVID, because normally we would go to the Hill and have conversations and describe these things, but they're not taking one-on-one meetings right now. So we're having to rely on, the coalition to do their individual outreach, but then additionally host an event with, for example, the Arizona State Society, so we can continue to educate staff on what this could do. Calling it a Trump tax loophole is a great tactic if you want to kill 1031 like kind exchanges, but it's not the reality. I am positive that he's used it substantially. Great, good for him, but so has a lion's share of the country as well. So
some of the research that we pulled, I think there's been, and it's from one of the local qualified intermediaries. I think there was just north of 14,000 properties that took advantage of 1031 exchange between 2015 and 2019. So, you're talking about, we're not talking about large CBD type office buildings. We're talking about just normal, everyday kind of property being traded around the state. And, if we see, if 1031 were to be capped or to end, I think we'd see that that transaction volume would significantly decrease. We would see liquidity in the real estate market dry up. And it's not akin necessarily to the change of tax law that took place back in the 80s, which obviously, there was abuses of the tax code from the accelerated depreciation, amongst other things that were, the tax shelter type days of the 80s. This is really quite different than that. So it's just hard to define the true impact of it outside of this. And just as Rick said, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So Mike and Rick, we appreciate your work on this. This really is important. So thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions for Mike or Rick this morning? All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate all the work.
Thank you for the time.
Yep. So next up, we're ready for you, Noel, on Zero Trafficking. So appreciate you taking time to be here this morning.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present. My name is Noel Thomas. I'm the CEO of Zero Trafficking. A little bit of background to our firm. We are a data and analytics firm that has supported the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and others in tracking illicit human trafficking networks and organized crime. So there's our website, www.zerotrafficking.com. Just hit the contact section. It will come directly to our team, and then we can set you up with whatever you need, whether it's training data or you want access to this dark watch network.
All right. Hey, Noel, thank you for your time this morning.
Oh, my pleasure.
This is really important. So I know just we've had issues obviously with folks we've known, and when you have kids and they understand why you're terrified when they go to the mall or go somewhere else by themselves and what's happening. So and it seems, I understand how difficult to prosecute when you get these kids hooked on something and they don't make but it's almost like the bad guys have tried to create the perfect scenario where they can get away with it for an extended period of time. So this is a brutal industry. One of our customers, one of my friends, Brian Steele at the Dream Center in Phoenix, this is something they work on, and I see my emails from him about once a week that shows how many folks they saved from human trafficking that week, and it's just, yeah, it's an awful industry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other, I already have a few things for the safe banking follow-up and on maybe an update on PD on what's possible on trafficking. And is there anything for our next meeting that will be held November? We had a scheduling conflict the end of October, so we bumped it about a week to November 5th. Are there any other particular topics you want me to research and have somebody present on next time? Or there's never a lack of banking issues, so.
Hey, James, something that kind of came up today just a little bit was in this conversation of the 1031 exchanges. He says, they're as common as 401ks. While the whole retirement mechanism is under attack, particularly for small business owners, they're talking about completely eliminating it, making it impossible for people over certain income thresholds to save anything in a 401k right now. And then they're looking at taxing them, and they're looking at compulsory withdrawals earlier than the 59.5 age for accounts over certain values. And so maybe it would be good to get some take on the whole retirement piece as well for business owners.
Great. That's a super idea. Thanks. Appreciate it, Jared. All right. I know we had a lot on our agenda that we covered very, very quickly this morning. So, I mean,
You're very efficient, James.
these topics are all fascinating. I just, one of the things I wanted to mention right before we left on the SEC chair Gensler, he in the Wednesday Wall Street Journal. So here's the head of the SEC. So you just heard it's a couple $1 trillion industry already. His comments were he does not see much long-term viability for cryptocurrencies. And it was all very negative. He compares the cryptocurrencies to the wildcat banking era that took hold in the US from 1837 till 1863 when the banks underwrote their own currency. And basically, I mean, the article just goes on, but it was obviously not very flattering of the cryptocurrency industry. So that's why I met David maybe a month or two ago, and the gentleman that purchased that bank is a billionaire and can afford to put a couple dollars behind the R&D. So if you look up their numbers junkie like I am, you can look up their UBPR report, and you can see that they're actually losing money right now just because of all the money they're spending on R&D. But him dropping $5 million in additional capitals like me going out and buying a Snickers bar. So it's not that big of a deal. So I'm really fascinated to see how they do that. This is obviously nothing we're looking to jump into anytime soon, but if there is a way, especially with the stable coin, that they can figure out how to do this, it could be pretty extraordinary what they accomplish. It's either going to be an unbelievable new service, or it's going to be a complete failure, one or the other. And I just, the regulatory side is, I honestly, even on fintech, the regulators continue to write, and they struggle with the fintech issues with crypto and blending that into banking. I can only imagine how many hurdles you have to jump through, because I'm sure they're learning every day on how do we do this in a framework that's safe, with the dollar. I can give $1 to Jeff, and Jeff knows it's worth $1. Obviously I have inflation, deflation, but it's worth $1. But if I give him, $10 in Bitcoin, tomorrow it might be worth 15 and it might be worth $1. Is, how do you live with that kind of fluctuation? And so I'm a little more fascinated on how that industry works and how it's going to morph into banking. It almost has to at some point. But then you look at crypto and you're like, okay, once it's fully regulated, is crypto going to be popular anymore? So
James, I missed out on a question that I was going to ask. In your research, did you find that besides the bank itself, the billionaire backing the research costs, were they getting any assistance from other interested parties in underwriting some of that? Not
yet. He's fully underwriting it on his own. He's also, if you look up, it was Kirkwood Bank and now it's GENUBank. If you look that up in the founder, it'll pull up some pretty interesting articles in Vegas or in Nevada. He actually he bought a enormous property in Nevada to create this own community that will pretty much be driven around crypto and businesses and residences. And so it's kind of a grand master plan. So it's just, this one actually probably has more possibility of happening just because they have somebody backing it that has all the money to make the tech side work. It's just, I'm still interested if they do get the whole tech side to work and all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, will the regulators still approve it at the end of the day? And I'm not sure.
Well, it's interesting. I think China announced today they're banning all cryptocurrency in their country. And then we had Bolivia formally adopt Bitcoin as an official currency. And I mean, I can't fly on a plane today without somebody next to me being an investor, even if it's a punk 19-year-old kid in cryptocurrency and just made 50 grand.
Yeah, no, but it doesn't, it very much reminds me of 2006 when, you go through the drive-through at Burger King and the kid that's taking your orders talking to you about the 7 rental houses that he just bought. And you're just like, okay, there has to be some issues. I definitely think what's going to happen is you'll see the cream of the crop rise and a lot of the rest of it fall off and die. Because I do think there's a fair amount of the cryptos that are completely worthless and no backing that, if I tell you this is worth $1 million and I start selling them for $1 million, I guess my phone's now worth $1 million. So it's really, I think it is a fascinating industry, but it's one you can't ignore. So we'll see where that goes. Well, I appreciate everyone's time this morning. If there's anything between now and the next few weeks you come up with, you decide you want to add to the agenda, please send it to Sally or Bob or I, and we will get on it. And hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, guys. James, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
bye-bye.
Stay connected to Mesa Chamber social media, email newsletters, Monday morning message, and mesachamber.org to always know what's happening at your Mesa Chamber.